Hey, everybody, welcome back to week 183. Oh, and you know what? Jack has a pretty cool little thing. Artificial intelligence has evidently been able to make him magically appear. So we got to show you guys that while everybody's ramping on. Okay, so Jack, beam me up, Scotty.
You ready for the big reveal? Here we
Yeah.
go. All right. We're so dorky. You know we are.
Well done. Well done.
That was my non-artificial intelligence, just lacking intelligence sound effects for Jack. Oh man. So hey, Jack, it's so good to have you back. And he's going to give us all a book report and a full review of last week's talk on owner fringe benefits. So we'll be expecting a dissertation from Jack. No, just kidding. So we are going to do a part 2 on owner fringe benefits. So we talked about Taylor Swift tickets last week, Adam, and we talked about homes and the Augusta rule. But this week we're going to talk about, hey, how do I write off my nanny? Can I do that? You know, those kind of things as well. So we'll go deep. But Jack, since you've just beamed back into the webinar, we ought to probably have you hit us with some current events, because I'll bet you've done some Cliff Clavin research for us with your expert Googling abilities.
Absolutely. So in continuing the nerdiness and dorkiness of things and mentioning Battlestar Galactica and Terminator and Eagle Eye and all those movies that are premised upon the fact that we build machines and machines take over. And the Matrix, how could I forget the Matrix? And turn us into their subordinates. You may have heard that last week the president put into motion an executive order regarding artificial intelligence. A few weeks ago, maybe a few months ago, when we had some guests on board, we were talking about artificial intelligence and a little bit more about this, but I just wanted to reiterate a few things, and this is the executive order key points. So the White House has issued a long-awaited executive order regarding artificial intelligence. It directs over 20 federal agencies with a deadline for implementation spanning between 30 and 1 year, just ahead of the 2024 election, interestingly. That was a political comment that was built into this. And what it does is, so the requirements for agencies are, let me put it over here, ensure AI safety and security, promoting responsible innovation, competition, and collaboration, supporting American workers, advancing equity and civil rights, standing up for consumers, patients, and students, protecting Americans' privacy and civil liberties, ensuring responsible and effective government use of AI, and advancing American leadership abroad. So as you can see, as per usual, the federal government throwing everything possible into a directive. In this form, it's an executive order. In many cases, it's a bill that is going through Congress, but the core of it is to try to provide some structure in a technology that seems to be just growing exponentially. I admittedly have not gone on Chat GPT because I am fearful of the whole Terminator thing. And why would I provide yet another way to be listened in on, have other incidents of my phone on Facebook and other places magically soliciting for my purchase of certain things. So but this hopefully will provide some structure, at least, that the federal government can use their weight to push companies into doing certain things in an organized fashion, at least more so than it already is, which is basically saying something is better than nothing, but not much better. So that's kind of what's going on with that. There's been a lot of chat over the past 2 weeks or so about that. And so I just thought I'd share that.
Well, that's kind of an interesting thing. So what you said was Gary's interpretation. There's a lot of corporate and governmental gobbledygook in this thing. which is actually why we started this 183 weeks ago, because all the governmental directives were confusing at best. So yeah, I guess the only thing is will they actually expose that they are going to, work hard to be able to silence critics of their own thinking, which has happened. I mean, it's like, that's what's scary to me, quite frankly. I mean, yeah, the whatever it is, Skylink and all that, but when we have narratives that are just promoting what somebody else thinks that we should think, that terrifies me, actually. And we've seen it, Twitter was definitely that way. And I've heard other people say, well, since Elon's done it, now it's just a right-wing MAGA thing. Well, I don't think Elon's MAGA. I really don't. I think he just exposed a bunch of stuff. So it's just like, I think what's important is that we think and we don't just take everything at face value. And so don't even take the stuff that we're saying at face value, go research it or call, Adam, or just show up at his house. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, the challenge is also that, I mean, there are people out there that are smarter than us who know how our minds work. I mean, those are the people that Facebook and Twitter and other people hire to basically manipulate us into buying things, seeing things, watching things. The whole concept, and just I got of binge watching. Well, let's start the next episode in 5 seconds after the last episode, kind of thing. And then you're just like hooked, those kind of things. But also, you probably have looked at a piece of paper with gobbledygook words on it, but you're able to read it because there are certain words that are put in there that allow you to interpret what is being said. So there's real words mixed into the junk, or prepositions and pronouns missing, and you're able to understand what's going on. So it's those kind of things that now you have artificial intelligence putting this together, taking algorithms that are used to, I shouldn't say manipulate, persuade us to do certain things or watch certain things, and then add that to the ability to make that happen faster. And whether it's that nanosecond that's on the screen when you're going through the airport and you see it, I call that, as the subliminally overt. So I understand and appreciate trying to regulate it, but I also understand that there is a capitalistic push to be the first to do this and get this out there and everything else, because it's competition.
Well, they said that Microsoft is knocking on the doors of total market cap and value over Apple because of their AI push. I thought that was really interesting yesterday, listening to that. So what you see is not necessarily always real. It's interesting too. There's a guy that's got like 300,000 followers on LinkedIn, saying he's kind of dialing back his engagement in LinkedIn just because there's so much AI writing a bunch of the same stuff, and you're not getting really somebody's heartbeat. And which I thought it was just really interesting too. I mean, there are uses, just like everything else. There are uses and there are abuses. So
yeah, I have well, if everybody gets to get on the soapbox, can I get on?
You should. It would be tragic if we didn't.
It really, like, it is kind of, and I swear we're going to get positive and talk about how you can stick to the government here in a second, but like, it is, as I do reflect, because I do get, I get asked a question from people that I have respect for around, like, is the dollar safe, as an example?
Yeah.
And, so if you go back to like conspiracy theories and what can you believe and what can you not believe and stuff like that, it's like, I gotta own, I love a good conspiracy theory, like Ancient Aliens, on the History Channel, or unsolved UFO mysteries. Like they're crap for me. Like I love it. And, with the exception of like the absolute fringiest items, like President Biden is an alien.
Yeah.
I'm all in. You know, like I'll own it. Like I'm all in, you know, probably a lot of shit. True. In Boatsman's opinion. Don't
Yeah.
judge me, people. And at the same time, you know, like it's hard for me not to be a hypocrite when I'm saying like, well, is the dollar safe? Because I read something online that, you know, in 1 month, you know, the government's going to declare a state of national emergency, cancel all the elections, and replace the dollar with Bitcoin. So should I be buying Bitcoin? Like I'm not messing around. Like that.
Yeah,
Like I've been asked
interesting.
that question more than once
And Bitcoin just hit 38,000.
from clients as like. So when you know when it's like, well, you can't trust anything. Like that person that says to do that would say you can't trust anybody.
Right.
You know, so
Right.
but yet that's an unverifiable claim.
Right.
In other words, like you can't, I don't know if we actually could ever be in the position of knowing whether or not there are vast forces at work to cancel the next election and replace the dollar with Bitcoin or not. Like, how would I even prove that? You know, to be true or not true. So I'm like, that's ridiculous. But at the same time, I've been asked that more than once in the last 90 days by clients of BGW as like a thing. And it's like,
yeah,
that's just tough because I mean, how can you, like, you talk about stress levels. It's like, I don't even know how I prepare for that, even if I wanted to prepare for that, even if I believed that it would be true. So it's like,
right.
I'd rather just say, you know what, that happened. It's sort of like, you know, I need to, it's funny, like one of our staff accountants, big gun owner, you know, has more than one AR-15.
Oh, really?
And it,
I gotta find out who that one is.
you know who it is. So, you know, I was like, why do you have those? You know, for when the shit goes down. I'm like, I don't know, shit goes down, I'm probably screwed anyway. So I'd rather just, you know, like I don't want to be in the world that's left when the shit goes down.
Yeah.
I'd rather have, I want my number. It's like, I want my number pulled, you know, like I remember my own brother-in-law was like, he didn't have any kids, you know, like he never wanted kids. And, you know, he got into, you know, you've been microchipped, you know, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, wow.
You know, one day they're going to flip a button and kill you off with all this kind of stuff. And that's all the world that's left. And as his reason that he didn't get vaccinated. I'm like, all right, that's cool, Ryan, you know, whatever floats your boat. And he's like, so I just want to be ready. I'm like, you don't even like children. Who do you think's going to be left and have to take care of all these people? Like, why wouldn't you join me and be one of the dead ones? You know, like, like you don't want to be like, I don't see how this is gonna, they won't brew beer anymore. Like, how are you can't function. Like, anyway, it's a long way of saying, like, I don't know, man. I mean, you kind of gotta, you only, so I kind of fall back to our brains only have so many hours available.
Yeah.
And it's my choice to decide whether or not I'm going to use that hour to be present, appreciative of my family, appreciative of the world around me, you know, focused on how I can do good in my business.
Yeah.
You know, or am I going to use the same hour, you know, panicked about the fact that the elections are going to get canceled and the dollar is going to replace by Bitcoin? I mean, it's a freaking choice, you know, like at the end of the day, it's a choice. And I don't know, when my number gets pulled, I'm going to feel pretty freaking stupid for the conspiracy theories that I believed in that weren't true, with the exception of ancient aliens. I'm gonna believe that.
Well, I mean,
you know, like there's there are some conspiracies I'm not giving up. That's one of them.
well, we just saw Jack magically appear with the teleporter, so there you go.
That's right. Yeah, that's because if I did not believe the ancient alien stories, then I actually would not believe Star Trek canon. and I refuse to believe that Star Trek canon will not ultimately come true. So there you go. There's my line.
Well,
I'm
there
fine,
you
I
go.
will.
Yeah,
X-Files, favorite show. Like when it was out, like one of
I
one
was
of
just
my
gonna
top
say
5
that.
favorite shows. Yeah.
I was like, okay, I'm already
That was a
geeked
good
out
show.
enough today, but yes, and they're on reruns, and you can like, yeah, huh?
binge watch.
Yeah, dive right back in, man. Smoking Man, I was like, oh yeah, this is really happening. Sorry, Cancer Man. What do they call him? Yeah.
Well, so before we go into part 2 of owner fringe benefits, are there any questions that the gallery, you got about 21 people on right now, that you guys either had questions about from last time, if you were able to listen to it, or you had questions going in now? Because I guarantee you, if that question is rattling around in your brain, it's rattling around in somebody else's brain. And if you want to remain anonymous because you're afraid that's going to sound like a stupid question, which it isn't, I can guarantee you, but we'll keep you anonymous. But I would say hit us up in the Q&A. Papa Joe is not on, at least he's not hitting us up in the chat, so I'm assuming he's not on. I haven't looked at the attendees yet, but nonetheless, hit us up on that. But so I'm going to start with this question, Adam. Can a nanny really be a legitimate business expense?
So this kind of goes back into the let's figure out how we can make that happen. So first off, if you look at the body of childcare, like is childcare a deductible business expense? The answer is childcare is a deductible business expense, but I mean, this is not counting like the flexible spending, the pre-tax flexible spending plans, like I said. This is talking about like literally could BGW be deducting childcare? So the answer to that is yes, but you have to follow some rules. And the rules would be, for example, BGW could build an on-premise childcare facility. Deductible childcare expense right there. We have on-premise daycare. There you go. You're welcome, Gary. The other thing that we could do is we could subsidize what the employees are paying. Hey, look, that just part of the package here at BGW is we're covering your childcare expense, as long as we're fair about that, like it's a benefit for everybody. And that's usually where a business owner gets hung up. Like, oh. So they want to deduct their own childcare bill. But if you look at the typical business owner, so let me draw a different analogy. So to follow, this is how we think in terms of deductible fringe benefits. We follow the Jesuit line of thinking, which Jack will appreciate, which is a line of thinking which basically goes, okay, I don't necessarily know the answer, but what is this most like, right? I like the Jesuits more than I like the Benedictines, Jack. I would be a Jesuit monk if I was Catholic. Love those guys because the total logic in the way that they think. So you worked with Hugh McCall, right?
Oh yeah.
So
I actually had a dream about him the other day.
So let me ask you a question.
It's pretty funny.
Did I'm assuming that Mr. McCall had an assistant at some point?
Carolyn.
All right.
Yes.
I'm assuming that Carolyn did some things for Hugh McCall, and no, don't go to a bad mind here. I'm sure that Carolyn did some things for Mr. McCall that some might argue were not
Bank of America
directly, sir, related to Bank of America.
I would think so.
Like
scheduling,
like book the theater tickets.
Yeah. Yeah, I would think so.
And yet at the same time, you can make an indirect connection that actually that was related to Bank of America because that was freeing up Hugh's time to be focused on Bank of America instead of picking up the theater tickets for the entertainment that he had with the major shareholder, right?
Yeah,
Okay. So in the instance of a nanny with the business owner, I think the reality is that very rarely are they actually nannies in the classic sense of like literally when I say classic, actually not even classic sense. They're more like Mary frickin' Poppins, and like I'm doing this and doing this and doing this. I'm arranging, but they truly are behaving like an extended executive assistant. And I'm guessing like at some point, like I don't know how long Carolyn, worked for.
She still does.
Well, but I mean, so like way back in the day when he was younger, like I wouldn't be hard to imagine a scenario that she did something for Hugh's kids. Like I don't know what it was, but would not be hard to imagine that. So the deductibility of the nanny comes in looking at, well, what does a nanny really do? And a lot of times nannies are actually functioning as personal concierges for the executive team, which is a deductible expense.
Wow.
Bow tie.
Has anybody ever pushed that one? Like, have we really like had somebody do that? And if so, were they ever audited?
Oh yeah. So, well, I mean, so you got to kind of go back to, well, get the facts right. So if we go back to, has anybody ever been audited? So do we have BGW clients that are deducting the, God, I hope the IRS is not listening to this. Like, well, we know who we're auditing next. Everybody that Adam signed the tax return for. Anyway, do we have business owners that have deducted personal assistance in the manner with which I described? Yeah, absolutely. Like off the top of my head, of those that have one, I'd say probably 75% are deducting that at my suggestion. But the way that they're doing it is they're just an employee on the payroll. It's just another employee that's on the payroll. So part of the deal is like you got to work, like if you've been paying the nanny cash, which was probably wrong in the first place anyway. Like they got to come into the light, be on payroll. That means you're eligible for benefits, you're eligible for 401k. They're an employee, at that point, all the bells and whistles.
That makes sense.
With that in mind, then, if you think about, okay, I got audited. I've had 0 instances where an audit, the IRS actually went in and did an inspection of every employee and said, what does that employee do? And are they ordinary and necessary to the business? That'd be freaking ridiculous if somebody did that. Because like, okay.
Yeah.
Because the job description's personal concierge, like however you want to call it, right?
Yeah.
In other words, it's like, it's legitimate, but at the same time, it's not a findable item because the record of the expense exists within the payroll report where Susie or Timmy is categorized to like department 001, administrative assistant. And then if you okay, well, what's the job description? Job description does all the shit that I need them to do so that I can be here earning money to pay taxes on. Got any other questions?
Yeah, that's interesting. Oh, we got a question from that one, evidently. On the earlier discussion, if you have clients who have frequent questions where their fear is, like audits, market collapse, unexpected tax burdens, drive their motivation, is your credibility unreasonably at stake? At what point does it come down to being considered bad business to continue that relationship? So if you got somebody that's always,
no. I mean, that's a good question. I'm not trying to read too much intent into that. I kind of look at it more like I kind of view the opposite. It's like I have a responsibility to help them, not do anything really freaking stupid. Like, in other words, like
Yeah,
the class to a little bit tamer example to use is more in the wealth management space. Like, you talk to any financial planner and they'll tell you who's the worst freaking client on the planet, the doctor that makes a lot of money. Why is it? Because they always pull out at a bottom. So it's like, if they just would listen to one piece of my advice, it would be stop pulling out at a bottom. And then they want to buy
Yeah.
stupid stuff that's at a market peak because they heard that their buddy bought it. So I kind of look at it as that is just to be a counterbalance around, like, well, look, I mean, I don't know. I mean, what, like, so using the Bitcoin example, I don't personally believe it. So my job is just to kind of walk them through. Oh, I got it. I mean, like the problem with conspiracy theories is there's always an element of truth in there
shred of
somewhere.
truth that,
So it's like, it's up
right.
to you. So if you look at, like, what's, fear, if I substituted the word fear for risk, risk is impact times probability. So in that particular example, if you go to risk is impact times probability, the impact, catastrophic, no question. Probability, I mean, think about the number of people that would have to be involved in that to make that decision actually happen, and the chances that they would all agree on it and be able to keep it secret. Freaking zero. So it's like, you kind of gotta get back to, I don't know, I kind of gotta feel like the probability on that one's pretty low. Like, it'd be catastrophic if it happened, but probability is pretty low. So therefore I rate that as, on the curve of risk spectrums that I need to be concerned about, it is a fat tail type risk event, but is a very, like, we're not even talking like 100-year flood risk on my risk calculation. It's more like, World War II type, we're all screwed and all rules will change. Therefore, me worrying about it right now is zero, because I will have, like, all rules will change at that point. Like, I will be growing a victory garden. Like, I don't even know what my life will look like. Therefore, it's not relevant for me to prepare for it. So I don't. That's how I feel about it. It's just like, I just want to make sure that nobody does anything that they can't recover from, based on what their belief system is.
Well, I think that kind of goes back. Oh, here's another question. In the late 80s, I ran a division for a Fortune 500 firm, and we offered travel incentives to distributors that tripled their business with us. We would take 300 distributor owners and their significant others to various places around the world for a week: Europe, Asia, Hawaii, etc. Not only were we providing a business incentive, but the travel itself was seen as a way of building relationships with these owners. Back then, these travel incentives were tax deductible to a company. I know a lot has changed in the last 35 years. Are travel incentives still deductible? Great question, Kurt.
Fabulous question, Kurt. So let's carve out is it against the law or not? So, like, Jack may know this off the top of his head, but, like, when I graduated from college, there was my job, which paid pretty well, and then there were the pharmaceutical representatives.
Like, yeah, that's true.
I'm like,
that was Nirvana.
You have a 2.0 freaking no offense to Mark, anybody did. You had a 2.0 freaking average, and you had a communications degree, and you're making 200 freaking grand a year as a 22-year-old.
But they were very affable.
Driving a Porsche, going everywhere to exotic locations, entertaining these. That's BS. You're not worth that. And I was pissed and judgmental.
Yes.
And then they slammed the door and said, no more, can you do these junkets or boondoggles with doctors anymore? And all of a sudden they're like, oh, I had to sell a Porsche to pay cuts. That's like, I actually have to work for a living and sell the drug on the merits. So the incentive was still deductible. It's just they couldn't do it legally anymore at that point. So in this particular scenario, what would not be considered deductible? So any, like, it could still be deductible, but it would have to be compensation to the recipient, with the following exception. So in other words, like, if you did, you know, if you did like, hey, big customers, we're gonna give you a trip. I mean, that's kind of the equivalent of a rebate, you know, be considered taxable compensation back to the recipient, versus no different than like a cash back, you know, rebate. But in this particular instance, you know, where you're doing like a junket, you know, if you're what would still be deductible and not income to the recipient would be a scenario where, like, BGW said, we're going to take our top 20 clients, we're going to fly to Hawaii, all of them, you know, wives, all of it, you know, we're going to put them up for a week. Never been to Hawaii, so it's on my bucket list. We're going to put them up for a week, and we're going to focus. And at the end of the week, you know, there's going to be, you know, some relationship building advice. You know, there's going to be a little couples retreat format that's going to be great. You know, a couple little side junkets you can do to do whatever. But at the end of this, you know, you as a couple or significant other will have an exit plan for your business and a wealth plan, you know, that you both agree on. Like, that's like, there's going to be some real work that happens at this event. That's deductible all day long. So you just got to make sure that you've married up a business purpose around it, other than, but yeah, same scenario, top 20 customers, I bought you a trip to Hawaii, it's good for the next year, have a party. That's the rebate version.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it would be income to them.
Okay. And you could always really make it really smarmy if you wore lots of gold chains and said, we're going to talk about timeshares.
Yeah, that's right. This is like, you know,
I was
this,
in one of those.
This is like Jack's webinar version of, like, for me, when it's like, hey, can we talk about employment contracts? I'm like, I can say nothing. That's correct. So say something to let people know you're still there, Jack.
I am totally still here enjoying the conversation, so it's all good.
He's taking notes for next Shoemaker Partner Retreat. Hey, this is BS, and we're doing this at the Marriott downtown.
Yeah. Yeah, there's gonna be some upgrades next year.
Go someplace nice.
Yeah, that's right.
So, Jack, I know this is not in your wheelhouse necessarily, but have you, because you work with a lot of franchises, those kind of situations, have they ever hit you up with a question of like, is this deductible? And I know you say it depends, and I'm not an expert, and so I'm going to send you to somebody like Adam. But have there been things either that you've wondered as a partner, hey, are these things deductible, or had franchisors or franchisees asking you, hey, can I do this legitimately, legally, etc.?
Yeah, and in fact, when you guys were talking about that, I was thinking exactly that with my franchisor clients that have their annual gathering to bring franchisees together. And what interestingly happens is you know, there's business that's conducted amongst the franchisee group. There are things that are introduced to them, and that thoughts about what they might be selling in the coming year. They usually bring in vendors. So if it is, let's say, a brick and mortar food franchisor, they'll bring in different vendors that are vying for those franchisees' business for, you know, cleaning, for supplies, for those kind of things that are approved vendors, so that they get to know them. And so all of that, I believe is, you know, their investment in that program, that weekend, those couple of days. Typically I get that question asked a lot, and yes, I do refer them back to their own CPAs, but my understanding is that yes, if it's done properly, then, you know, many of those expenses are deductible as business expenses because you're conducting business. But to Adam's point, it can't be just hey, let's show up and go to Disney World for, a couple of days and then have an
Yeah.
hour meeting kind of thing. So that's not going to work. But, and I tell them to document everything. So, who's in attendance and, do all those things, and make it very formal. Not uncomfortably formal, but sufficiently formal that it's not just, hey, show up whenever you want to kind of thing. And, we're throwing some things out there, and have a commitment by those attendees to actually come. Now, the thing is, what I don't know is how far extended that is. Is it, okay to bring 2 kids, 3 kids, bring the nanny, so those are things that I don't know. But apparently if the nanny is helping plan the outing, so maybe you can.
Yeah, that's right. And it's not like you can Google the IRS website and they'll say, well, 2 kids allowable, 3 kids not. So it ends up being kind of a judgment call, in other words, like the answer to that would be yes, but if the agenda was called for 2 days of business meetings, but you took a 5-day trip, maybe only do 2 days, not the full 5 days.
Yeah.
So that's usually the guidance we'll give clients. But related to that, another one that I get, Gary, that I don't think we covered on the last call, so correct me if we did, is paying the kids.
We talked about it a little bit with being able to use even little kids as advertising.
Yeah, so I just wanted to make sure that we re-hit on that, because it does come up this time of the year. It's like, really, I can pay my kids, blah blah blah. And it I just, if you kind of follow on the theme of like, well, what's the new way of attracting business? It's humanizing yourself. I'm not advocating pimp your kids, but it's humanizing yourself and kind of letting people know the authentic person. For some people that includes letting other people see a window into their personal lives, So using myself as an example, my most the post that I've posted on LinkedIn with the most impressions was the post of myself and my son when he popped in at a recruiting event at UNCC, and the post was, I can't believe I'm this old, my son is finally at a recruiting event.
Yeah.
And that got the most impressions. Like,
yeah,
wow. I mean, I'm not on LinkedIn. My mom's not on LinkedIn. Like, I'm not on LinkedIn because, I'm trying to keep, the folks in Blackwell, Oklahoma up to date with what I'm doing. My LinkedIn posts have a freaking purpose.
right.
Right. And that one got the most impressions, out of anything. So why can't tell me why I can't pay miles for that? Because I got I actually can prove a result. Miles in the post equals more impressions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why wouldn't I keep doing that? So
yeah.
Peace out. Take that, IRS.
And even if nothing else, I mean, if you've got them sweeping up, emptying garbage cans, stuffing envelopes, running errands, any of that kind of stuff, teach them some work ethic too.
Yeah, and I will tell you, it actually would have created a lot less frustration in the Boatsman family. And I said, hey guys, will you be in some social media posts with me and help me manage my social media campaign? And I'll pay you for that deductible business expense so that I can then afford to pay the freaking lawn service versus you need to learn how to mow the yard and then have to freaking do it again because they sucked at it. In other words, they mowed the yard with hate, not love. So it's like I taught them how to do it. They just chose not to actually. I mean, the worst one ever was like, my son mowed half the yard. Like, who does that, Jack? Mowed half. Yeah, I'm done. You mowed half the yard. How can you call it done? Oh, there's another half of the yard. I'm not even talking like. I'm not even talking like
tall
front and back of the yard. I'm talking like
half of
my yard is kind of a kidney pool shape, and he did the first part of the kidney and didn't do the second part of the kidney and called it done. I'm like, who raised you? It was me.
It's a
I did a
parenting
crap-ass
issue.
job.
And he didn't run out of gas or anything, didn't have a really good excuse.
What? It was
Sounds
an electric mower.
Oh, that makes it even more funny. Wait, so
Yeah.
let me make sure I understand this. So my son has transitioned from, well, almost, he has a few more games left, from varsity football to karting. So launching himself at 60 miles an hour on a concrete track against other racers in a Mario Kart looking thing. Are you saying that if I post something with him in his, pretty cool outfit, he has like the visor and it's reflective and everything else, and I convert a client, that I might be able to pay him for that?
I don't even think you need to convert a client. I think if I'm doing the Jack Santinella post, I might post something, I don't know your parents, but this would be like a thing. Happy to see that I'm more supportive of my son who doesn't want to be an attorney working through the grindstone than my parents were with me. Post. Most impressions ever for Jack Santinella. Here's $500. Thanks for that. Because you don't know, like on social media, it's just, there's
Yeah,
no
that's
one
true.
correlation. It's just, that's part of the halo effect, right?
It is.
Humanizing yourself is part of the halo effect.
Yeah.
All right. See, and that works. Although I hope my son never sees this video, because then he'll be wanting to take selfies with me all the time and say, post, post, post,
Yeah.
post, pay me, pay
Oh,
me, pay me.
yes.
So here, actually, you're going to see this post coming up. So this is a preview for everything. So I'm going to see my daughter for, coming up at the Carolina Duke game.
Oh, cool.
So the post is going to go something like this, hey dad, I heard that you can pay kids, pay me. And I'm going to say, will you be in this video? Sure, dad. Pay her. Thanks,
Venmo.
dad. And then she's going to say, dad, I need to pay rent. I'm like, you got the money for rent. But I mean, that's like,
Yeah.
that is how it's supposed to work.
Well,
Yeah,
there
I
you
don't
go.
think that's going to be her perspective when, it'll be like, oh, wait a minute. I didn't realize that was in
She's going to have a
advance.
snarky look, that's going to be part of the charm of the video. And we're going to see if she can beat Miles's impressions.
Oh, there's nothing like a
Burn.
competition.
Yeah.
I like that. Speaking of, this is a little bit of a rabbit trail, but man, does it apply. I was talking to a friend of mine that has been helping a auto service company. And this auto service company should be about 4 times more profitable than what they are. And a lot of it has to do with the caliber of people that they've hired. They have a bleeding heart. They hire people that barely have any skills, and they're doing auto service. So I'm not going to mention the auto service place because you may take your stuff there. But here's what was interesting. The guy that is helping them is a good friend, and we've helped him with his company, and he sold it. And so he's helping somebody else, paying it forward and getting paid, which is great. They just started putting up metrics. Daily and weekly, they put up daily and weekly metrics on throughput of these mechanics. So they thought they were going to have to like do a wholesale cleanup, and they've had a lot of churn. What's interesting is the throughput has gone up dramatically, and it's this friendly competition. And one of them had called the CFO and said, hey, you didn't have these 2 things on my Friday deal, and I want it adjusted because it's important. Like, think about that. When people that we may have even written off say, like, man, yeah, they just don't have it. But if we can find the right incentives, but sometimes just putting a spotlight on the metrics and accountability, and there's a little friendly competition going on between people. Now you got to watch it because it can go into caustic pretty quickly too, but there is something about that. So little rabbit trail, but fresh off the press from our Tuesday morning breakfast meeting. So anyway, hit us up with another, oh wow, I could actually do this. And so let's talk about a boat, because we have a friend who has a boat. Spent $1 million on a catamaran. Great. That's what that guy loves to do, and he's got the money to do it. How could you make that $1 million catamaran be a tax deductible expense?
Yeah, so that now you're getting into the layups, Gary. I mean, geez.
I'm from Kansas.
Yeah, so you got. I'll give you the spectrum on the boat. So in this particular instance, you know, it's a 53-foot Bali sailing catamaran that's in an active charter fleet. So that is a business. Like, it is being chartered out, producing rental income, has expenses associated with it. So from our standpoint, it's no different than the rental house. Like, in other words, in the tax code, it behaves no different from the rental house. So
what about personal use?
I'll get to that.
Okay, cool.
So when you have something like that, you know, it's clear. It's no different than like your beach vacation place, you know, that you rent out on VRBO. So what you're left with then, so let's say, you know, it costs, you know, it was $1 million to purchase, you know, so you've got depreciation expense of the yacht itself. And then let's say it costs, you know, $250,000 a year to operate, between docking fees, repairs and maintenance. You know, you got to have a crew for when people come and stuff like that. So you're out of pocket every year $250,000. No, you know, and let's say that, you know, 150 that isn't even variable. You know, like 100 is variable, 250 is the total, 100 is variable. So with that in mind, you need to create enough charter income to offset the 250. Like, that's what you're going for, is offset the 250. Ideally, you're shooting for maybe like 300 because you want to cover the payment on the boat. So I'm trying to get 300 grand in charter income. So, but I want to use it myself.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think of cases to use it. You know, well, a case to use it would be, I'm going to take, like, who am I going to go sailing with anyway? You know, a couple of my employees and Gary. You know,
I'm still waiting for that.
He's invited us. We just haven't gone.
Oh.
Yeah, I think that ball is actually in our court, because I'm quite confident if we actually texted him right now and said,
He probably
"We're
yeah.
ready. What are you doing next weekend?" He'd say, "Let's go." So, like, in other words, like, he's begging to have people come on the boat with him. So if we use that, well, you know, it's a company expense. The company can rent it, no different than, you know, Jack can rent it. You know, so it's, in that scenario, it's just another charter paying customer at that point. So that's easy and a no-brainer, as long as you've wrapped up around a business purpose around it. Like, hey, we're going to do a strategic planning retreat. We're just going to happen to be on the boat while we're doing it. So the next scenario would be, okay, it's just me and the wife. You know, what are we doing there? You know, in that scenario, it's a judgment call between, like, okay, were we really doing nothing? You know, or alternatively, were we doing something? You know, like, you know, maintenance, outfitting the stuff, you know, hiring the crew, you know, and I just happened to be staying on the boat while I was doing it. So, like, in other words, there's a balance between, I really was just enjoying it for personal use, versus I really was down there maintaining my investment, and I just happened to stay in it while I was maintaining my investment. In that scenario, what you're going to do is you're going to just say, okay, let's take the personal use days, like, they're truly personal use, and just back a pro rata version. You know, let's say there was 14 personal use days out of 365.
Okay, yeah,
I'm going to back out 14 365ths of the 250 expense structure, you know, from what I'm deducting. So then you go back to, well, then what about the days that it's not being used at all? You know, period. It's no different than a vacant rental property, you know, like that, you're deducting it. Like, you get the deduction for the idle capacity. It's just not rented. You know, meaning, like, I don't need to say it's only a pro rata version of the expenses on the number of days it was rented. it's more like the opposite. It's a pro rata of only the days that I use for pure personal use. Everything else is deductible.
Interesting.
That's on the yacht. Like that's kind of an easy one. I mean, the harder one is I own a boat on Lake Norman that's docked at my house. How can I deduct that? That one, you gotta fall back more on like using again the Jesuit priest example. What's the most like, Jack? You know, in that scenario, it's the most like I rented a car, or I rented a room for something. It really, you can't deduct the boat. Like you just
Yeah.
you like that. I mean, you could, but I would not recommend it. But what you could do is you could say, for times that I'm really taking my team out, or I'm taking my CPA out on the boat to talk to them about tax planning. Like Gary and I actually came up with one of our best ideas and implemented it while on a boat in Lake Norman. The hell that isn't a tax deduction,
Yeah.
So in that scenario, and part of the reason we were able to come up with that idea is because we're in the middle of a freaking lake with no distractions, with a specific purpose. So the deduction in that scenario would be, what's the fair market value of a 4-hour boat rental on Lake Norman for a double-decker pontoon boat? It's about $400. So what I would do in that scenario is I would submit a business expense to the company to reimburse me for the $400. That's the equivalent price of the had I rented a boat to do the same thing.
We truly did that. We went into a cove that was quiet, dropped anchor, brought out the flip chart, and we created the vault, which is, so if anybody uses the vault in our and I mean, the knowledge vault's amazing, but that's where we did it. It was really fun. And it was like, we remember it and people enjoy it because of that. So that's a great example.
So
Any
I have a
other questions out there for
variation of
Kelly?
that while people are looking at questions, but so we were members of the boat club down at Lake Wiley for a period of time in the past. And they don't have them anymore, but they had like 38-foot, 40-foot cabin cruisers, which should not be on Lake Wiley to begin with.
No.
And so, but I would take clients out and, obviously it was a membership. So I don't think I deducted any part of the membership, but I deducted the fuel, or got reimbursed for the fuel, and it was a business expense, and which was great because when I rented it for personal, you don't, launch yourself down Lake Wiley in a boat like that unless you want like $1,000 fuel bill. When it's a business expense and you're trying to impress people, planning out a 40-foot cabin cruiser on Lake Wiley when it was during the week and no one else was around, is fun and a great way to not have to pay for it yourself, hypothetically speaking. So so that's an alternative, is that I did the fuel thing but not any part of the the monthly membership fee for that.
You could have gotten a little more aggressive by saying what would it cost to just rent the boat for the same couple hour time period, but you're still solid with the fuel, buddy.
Excellent. Good.
Baby steps, Jack. Baby steps.
Yeah, that's good. All right, so we've got 5 minutes left. Any questions? Or one more scenario?
Did we cover golf memberships?
We did not.
Okay, yeah, so that's another one that we get a lot, because got this golf membership. It's like, how can I deduct that? The answer is you can't. Gun clubs, you substitute like whatever it is, right? Okay, you can't. But what you can do, again, assuming that there's a business thing that occurs, around it, like, hey, we're going to do your quarterly review while we're out playing around a golf or whatever, grab a beer at the end and, some lunch. What you can deduct would be the price of the guest round at the course and the meal. So if you think about it, it's like, you know, I'm not a member of River Run, but hypothetically, if I were, let's assume that monthly fee is $1,000, and I take you out for a round, and the guest fee is $100. What I could deduct would be $200. My equivalent guest fee and your guest fee of $100 plus the meal, even if that was part of in the price of the meal, even if the meal was already built into my $1,000 because I had a meals
Package.
package.
Yeah.
requirement.
Interesting. All right, that's good to know. All right, that prompted a question. Oh, okay, that's fine. Jack has a hard stop, so we need to leave in 2 minutes.
Peace out.
Yeah, Jack, what we got to do is like, maybe can you disappear just like you appeared with the transporter?
I can try. I have to reach out to the captain of the ship to beam me up. So yes, I can probably arrange
Oh.
that.
Okay, well then you'll just have to be talking and then peace out and then. So anybody that came on here late, we'll put this thing up on the BGW CPA YouTube channel later on today. And thank you guys for joining us every week. It's always fun. Yes. So Rob, I'm glad you asked that question. Can you get a recording of the first one? Yes, you missed it.
Yeah.
Go to the BGW CPA YouTube channel and look up one that has owner fringe benefits as the graphic on it. And YouTube doesn't make it easy to sort through.
Yeah.
Like I don't know why. It drives me kind of crazy because I've got a little YouTube channel too, for my book and all that. And so
The shoemaker one is a little more organized, just saying. Because it's only this stuff. It doesn't have all of the other stuff that you guys got going on, which are really cool.
Yeah, but it's like, I don't know, but look for the graphic that says owner fringe benefits and you can find that. So hopefully that helps. Kurt, thank you for great questions. Same way to the anonymous questions and everybody that's asked questions. And we're gonna, all right, so Jack, start talking so you can beam out.
Well, you got to make the sound effects though.
I'll do it.
Okay, ready?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. Oh. Whoa, wait a minute.
Nice. All right.
That was way too fast. Apparently the beam
was
out's
way
faster than
fast.
the beam
Yeah.
in.
All right, guys, we'll see you next week.
See ya.
Week 184. All right.
Thank you.
Bye.